Hi everyone. I was on YouTube yesterday and I came across this video called Visualization, How Far Should You Look? It was an excellent video, gave you some advice for how to analyze in your head and how many moves to look ahead, things like that. And I recommend watching this video. It's on Dan Heisman's YouTube page. I didn't know Dan Heisman, but I've watched 3 or 4 of his videos now, and they were all excellent. He seems to be a great chess instructor. I looked up his Wikipedia page, found out that he is a national master, he's an author and a chess instructor. He's a 2-time Open chess champion in Philadelphia. And he's got a list of books here on his Wikipedia page that he has authored. And he seems to be very active as a chess coach. So I'll put a link to this video in the description below, and check out Dan Heisman's other videos as well. And while watching this video, I got the idea to try something that I've known about for years, but I've never actually tried it, called Solitaire Chess. Now, Solitaire Chess means you get a grandmaster game, and you choose a side like white, you cover up the moves, and you guess the next move. And then you have to analyze it, and you have to have reasons for your move, don't just purely guess. But you have to guess what white is actually going to play. And then you write down your move that you guessed, and then you check to see what white actually played, and you can mark it incorrect or correct. And a good way to get some good grandmaster games to try this out with is to go to chessgames.com, and this is a free database. You can get a free account on here if you'd like to do some kibitzing or store some games. There's a paid version you can also do if you want to get rid of all the ads and stuff. I hate all these ads that keep popping up. But you can find a lot of games here. For example, what I did was I just searched for a player like Magnus Carlsen and search. You can also search by year. You can do a lot of different search things like openings. You can find an opening you want to find games in, do a search, and here's all of Carlsen's games. He has 3,558 games in the database going all the way back to 1999. Now, I just found out that yesterday was Carlsen's 30th birthday, so that means in 1999 he was 9 years old. All right, and he was in this master database. Okay, anyway, I went all the way to the very end. I wanted a more recent game, and then I clicked back, and I found a game from 2019 from the World Rapid Chess Championship. And Carlsen was playing Savchenko, which was a 2,500 plus grandmaster. And I wanted to show you the game and explain how I played this solitaire. So from the chess game, you just click on one of these games and it'll pop up. You can play it right here in chessgames.com if you want to, but I hate the ads. So what I do is I scroll down, and you can't look at the moves. The moves are right below the board. But scroll down here, you can see the PGN, and you can view it. And again, without looking at it, I clicked Control A to select it all and Control C to copy it. Then I went into Lichess, and I went into an analysis board and pasted the PGN. And then all the moves will pop up here left of the board. And if you want to cover them up, you can click this little menu icon in the bottom right corner, and this will cover up all the moves, and you can leave that there as you're playing through the game. Now, don't start guessing until you're out of opening book. So you don't want to guess, book moves. So I played this to move 2, and already I was out of opening book. I did not know that move by black, C5 in that position. I checked the opening book after I played, and it's called the Krauss variation. Okay, anyway, I really recommend doing this. It took me about 90 minutes to sit down and select my moves in this game, and it's supposed to help you analyze and visualize in your head. So it's a great way to do that. We often play a lot of blitz online and don't get the opportunity to do any deep thinking in our chess games. You can also do deep thinking if you play long games yourself, classical time control games yourself. But if you don't want to play a long game, you don't want to put in the time commitment, try solitaire chess. If you don't want to guess every single move, you can even jump ahead and guess every fifth move or so. All right, anyway, I wanted to show you some things about this game that I found interesting. I spent about 90 minutes with this game, more time than the players did since it was a rapid game. And I'll just point out a few key positions. Okay, h3, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, a6. Here you could drop the bishop back to a4. That was my choice, which was incorrect. Carlsen played c takes d5. And now both minor pieces are mutually attacked. And black went for knight takes d5. And then queen takes d5. A takes b5. Queen takes b5. Okay, so white is temporarily up a pawn here. And I say temporarily because this pawn on d4 is very weak, it's under attack, and it's going to be lost. But then again, that pawn on b7 is very weak, and it looks like Carlsen's about to win that. So I think the way the opening was played favors white. I think black needed some improvements. He played bishop g7 here, and then this is a move I was quite proud to find. I spent a long time analyzing the move d5. The obvious move that comes to mind here is d5. The knight is pinned, and your pawn on d4 is under attack twice, so why not push it to safety and attack that pinned piece? Somehow Carlsen didn't choose that move. He must have analyzed it quite deeply to find out he didn't like it. But I liked it, and when I tried it in the engine afterwards, I found out, yes, that's highly preferable to the engine. It likes it much better than Carlsen's move. So that's another great thing about solitaire chess. You can pat yourself on the back and feel great when you play a move that the engine says is better than the world champion. Of course, I'm probably just lucky. I didn't fully analyze it, and it's just one move, and it's a rapid game, but it feels good. So I analyzed d5, and here were my thoughts about d5. Okay, I said to myself, black has to save that knight. It's under attack, and the key move I saw that saves it is rook to a5, which threatens the queen and the pawn behind it. However, the pawn is defended by the knight. So, for example, rook to a5, if we move our queen away, like we take on b7, then black cannot take that pawn with the rook for two reasons. We could take the rook and win the exchange, or we can take the knight that's going to be hanging on c6. After queen takes b7, the knight is hanging on c6. So before rook to a5, I reasoned black should take that knight off the board with check, so that nothing is guarding the d5 pawn anymore. Then rook to a5, then queen takes b7, attacking the knight, which forces queen takes d5, not rook takes d5. The queen has to protect the knight. But then queen c8 check, and oh yeah, now I remember, I shouldn't pat myself on the back for d5, because the reason I thought it was so good is because I analyzed everything right to here and reasoned that, oh, black has to play queen to d8 to block the check, and then I play queen takes c6 and win a knight. And that's why d5 is good, and I thought it was just purely winning. Okay, so I was wrong, because of course there is knight to d8. And so I did not see that move, knight to d8, in this position. So staring at this position, I had to think d5, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, rook a5, queen takes b7, queen takes d5, queen c8 check, and then queen blocks is what I settled on, not knight blocks the check. The queen blocks the check. And so I did not see that. So I have to work on my visualization. It's hard to see that so many moves ahead, to keep everything in your mind. So anyway, I think the reason d5 is preferred by the computer is not the reason I thought it was preferred. I thought I was going to win a piece, but instead the knight blocks. And then after I looked at it with the engine, I went further and I said, okay, so why is this so preferable? Why does the engine like this so much? White is up a pawn, but he was going to be up a pawn anyway, and he is up a pawn in Carlsen's line as well. Well, the line continues, and this is kind of complicated. For example, white might castle there just to get safe so he doesn't get any checks from the black queen. And then I noticed the pawn on a2 is hanging, but apparently black cannot take it. So black has to do something like castle here. Castling would be the best move, I think, because taking on a2 is too dangerous to leave that knight pinned, and black is going to lose material. And I thought this was a nice tactical sequence. Rook takes a2, queen takes a2, rook d1 attacking the knight, queen a5 to protect it, only move, but then queen d7 check, king has to move over, and now you could either win the knight, or even better, you have a checkmate, bishop to h6 check, king g8, queen to e8 is mate. So I thought that was a nice little mate. So maybe Carlsen saw a lot of this and decided he didn't like d5 as much. Another thing I noticed was while playing solitaire, I often ended up picking complicated moves. I picked moves that I had to justify with a lot of analysis, and then when I checked Carlsen's move, it just seemed so simple, and I said, oh yeah, I should just play simple chess. That's an easy advantage. So I think Carlsen knows that in a rapid game he doesn't have a lot of thinking time. He's going to play the move he sees everything. He knows all the consequences of his move, and he sees his advantage, and he plays it. So he took the pawn on b7, then knight takes d4, castles, rook d1 pinning the knight, queen b8 getting out of the pin. And now here, another interesting point I wanted to bring up. I settled on the same move Carlsen did, which was queen to e4. And I rejected taking this pawn on e7. And this is interesting. The computer suggests taking that pawn on e7. And I thought it was bad because black has knight to c2, hitting our rook, forcing it to b1, followed by bishop takes c3. And this pawn is pinned because the queen would take our rook. And that's as far as I looked. However, the engine suggested there is a move here for white, which is queen e4, hitting the knight. And there's nothing black can do to stay up a piece. White is going to recover either the bishop or the knight. This is an interesting example here. Knight to d4. We can actually take the bishop because the queen is now protecting the rook. But then the line continues. Black strikes with knight e2 check, figuring if white takes the knight, he's leaving protection of his rook and the queen can take the rook. However, white can take the knight because if black takes the rook, then we have this discovered attack. Bishop to h6, so the rook is now hitting the queen, and if the queen saves itself, we win the exchange back, and we'll be up 2 pawns as white here. However, after black's move queen takes a2 here to save the queen and gain one of our pawns, I would probably take the queen off of a2 followed by taking the rook. And if we did that, let's see what it looks like. Probably get behind the passed pawn, and you get this position which is probably drawish, even though you have this extra pawn here. So there's a better way to play it. After queen takes a2, you can play queen to e5 and threaten a mate on g7. And then f6 blocks it, queen to e7 threatens the mate again, the queen falls back to block it. Then we can take the rook and protect our queen with the bishop, and then rook takes the bishop, and then queen c5. And it's the same passed c-pawn here, but now the queens are on the board, and that gives white more winning chances. Chess is complicated. There's so much to think about. Anyway, Carlsen played queen e4, then f5, and again, Carlsen doesn't take the e7 pawn. He plays queen d3 to keep an eye on c2. So the point is to keep that move from happening, knight to c2. Okay, e5, nice expansion here. Rook b1, queen b4, bishop e3 developing, rook f d8 in line with our queen. So white attacks black's queen, it goes to b3, and then minor pieces get traded. And then Carlsen offers the trade of queens here with queen to b5. Okay, black declines to take the queen. He plays rook to b8, which guards his own queen. And then I found this funny. Carlsen chose queen to c5, and that was deemed as his only mistake in the game by the engine. But the engine was wrong. When I followed through with the engine's analysis, here's what it said Carlsen should have done. He had a 1.4 advantage according to the engine, and queen to c5 knocks that down to 0. However, the engine suggested playing queen takes b3 check. And when I followed the engine's suggested top moves, this is how the line went. A pawn gets pushed dangerously far, but black has it under control. And after rook to d6 to protect the a pawn, now the engine says it's only plus 0.1. It's equal to Carlsen's move. So the engine just, when you ask the engine to analyze the whole game, it only gives a couple seconds to each move. So you can't really trust it. You have to give it more time than that. So Carlsen's move, I think, was equal to the engine's move, even though it called it a mistake. So I found that funny. Anyway, the queens did end up getting traded. Let's skip ahead here. Right here, I thought an interesting plan for black while I was playing solitaire was rook to a4. And that threatens rook takes a3 because the pawn on b2 is pinned here. And there's no way white can save a pawn. If he drops back here to protect his rook, to stop rook takes a3, then he's left protection of b2, and black can just take on b2. He has his bishop guarding. So black gets a pawn there. Or if he moves this rook away so that pawn isn't pinned anymore and you can't play rook takes a3, again, you've lost protection of that pawn. So black is going to win a pawn after rook a4. So I thought that's what black was going to play. But he played king f7 and tried for a different plan, which was equivalent according to the engine. King g2, rook d4, nice idea. Try to get rid of this rook so it's not protecting b2 anymore. So black is forking the knight and the rook here, so this rook can't step aside without losing the knight. So Carlsen protects the rook, rooks get traded, and then the b2 pawn falls. And so now the material is equal. White does have this outside passer, but the engine says it's all zeros. It's a completely drawn game. This pawn is easily contained. But Carlsen pushes on anyway, as he always does. He will just continue to make accurate moves until you blunder. And both players played this endgame exceptionally well, according to the engine. They kept making best moves, sometimes only best moves. Okay. Nothing interesting happens yet. That's an important move there to know about. If you don't know about this kind of move, sometimes this is a good idea. You give up a pawn. You just try to break apart the pawn structure here. A lot of beginners don't consider that move because the pawn is unguarded. But the point is, well, look at all these isolated pawns that result. Now you can attack them all. You might win all three of those. So black wouldn't take that pawn. He would play rook e4 here like he did. Rook f3. He gives up the a pawn and he reasons, okay, the black king has been lured very far away from the action. And even though black is now up a pawn, I think it's white that is still trying to win this game, even though it's completely drawn. I don't think black has any chances, but white might have chances if black slips up. Okay, king h4, king b6, king g5. Okay, the rook cuts the king from coming any further. Okay, and this rook cuts the black king from getting any closer to the king side here. Okay, he pushes his pawn to h6 reasoning. If he can ever capture that h7 pawn, then this pawn will be very close to queening. Okay, rook c6. Here was a place where I made a mistake in my solitaire game. I thought rook takes c6 was winning. Carlsen didn't play it, and he was correct. Here's what I thought. Okay, I figured rook takes c6, king takes c6, king comes up, and now this pawn cannot push and run because the king would just come back and grab it. So the black king would come closer, and that would allow white time now to grab this h-pawn and promote and win. And I figured my analysis was, okay, if he pushes this pawn, then we have f takes g5, f4, g6, f3, g takes h7, f2, we queen and he queens, but we queen first and we have an extra pawn. So we should be able to win that endgame even if we didn't have this nice move queen to f8 check, which forces the trade of queens and an easily won endgame. I figured that was winning. But what I had missed was here black does not push his g-pawn. He plays the excellent move king to e7 with the idea that if we take the h-pawn, he traps us in front of the h-pawn. This is a typical endgame piece of knowledge you should know about. Even if all these pawns were off of the board, this is a draw because the white king can never get out from in front of his h-pawn. And it would result in a quick stalemate right there. So that's why Carlsen didn't take the rook, because of that stalemate. Instead, he continues to play on rook e3, rook c4. Now, white attacks that h-pawn, and black falls back to guard it. Rook g7, nice move. Okay, here the king attacks the rook, and this is where the blunder happens. This is black's only blunder in the game. Black played an exceptional game against the world champion, being outrated by over 300 points. Rook d4. Okay, I think black just had to stay, like maybe go rook c7, stay in the 7th rank to protect that pawn, or maybe check the king and then go back to the 7th rank. You can't win this race here. Let's see what's going to happen. Rook takes h7, rook takes f4, rook h8, gets behind that pawn. Now this is an important piece of endgame knowledge as well. Suppose these pawns weren't on the board. It doesn't matter if they are or not. What white is threatening to do, if it were his move, he would play rook to c8 check, then queen his pawn, supported by his rook. Even if king to b7, attacking the rook, we have h8. And then if the rook takes the queen, the rook comes back and takes the rook, and we win that endgame. That's the threat. So in this situation where you have that h-pawn about to queen and your rook is in front of it, the two safe squares for the black king are here and here. And black knew that and played king b7. Why not here? Well, that loses to this move because if black takes that pawn, we skewer right here and win that rook. So that's why king to b7 was played instead, so we can't get behind that king and skewer that rook. But it doesn't matter because the white king comes over and protects the white pawn, and then the rook comes out and white is going to queen, and black resigned here. I'll point out sometimes another technique in a position similar to this might be rook to b8 check, giving up the rook so you can queen with check. And that would be winning as well, but Carlsen does the easier method, and he's going to queen and not give up his rook. Okay, so I found that game very enriching to take 90 minutes of my time to slowly analyze and play through it and practice my visualization skills, so I really recommend Solitaire Chess. Thanks for watching this video.